welcome everyone. I think we've got a few, about 6 or 7 people in the session today. So you feel free to chat, ask questions, all those things. I think since we have so few people, we can actually carry on a conversation throughout the session. Today we are talking about demystifying market research. I'm going to do a little kind of level set in terms of definitions for the purpose of this session. And then I'm going to share some of my tips and tricks in terms of how to find the information that you'll need in order to do your research before you go out and actually talk to people. So really taking advantage of what's available to us online. Most of it is free in terms of secondhand and secondary research. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Okay, so first of all, about me really quickly. My name is Juana Whitmore. I am a business strategist and accredited small business consultant. My personal life, really, I was born in Memphis in a military family and a retail family. So you can guess we moved around a lot. Lived in Tennessee twice, Florida, and then Colorado twice. And then moved to Minnesota about 30 years ago when I was 20 years old. And the best thing about that was I was excited to be in the same place that Prince lived. So I was super excited about that. I am the mother to Rajane and a grandmother to Camila. My education, in terms of my background around entrepreneurship, I have a BS in small business management and entrepreneurship, a master's in nonprofit administration, and I'm currently a doctoral student in business administration. If for somehow miracle I happen to make it through the program, I will be the 3rd doctor in my immediate family, so that's pretty cool. Professionally, I was a targeteer for almost 20 years, doing internal consulting work for most of that time in business process consulting, business development, and business architecture and innovation and strategy. I left there to be the director at MEDA of Consulting Solutions, helping entrepreneurs start and grow their businesses, and then went on to be the executive director at Jeremiah Program before doing my thing full time. And then finally, my passion is helping entrepreneurs learn, launch, and grow. I love designing innovative business models and processes, and I really love working with the really early stage entrepreneurs and small businesses. So if you could just take a second and type your name and your company in the chat. This is shameless plug time. If the name of your company doesn't say what you do, let us know what you do. I know we've got Connie, who's the CEO of FINNOVATION Lab on. Ashlyn, who's actually one of our Finn Fellows. She is working on a business for sustainable fashion, which is awesome. Stacy is in financial service compliance software. That is interesting. Grant is with Brio Marketing. Yes, another familiar face. All right. So I want to just kind of, for the purpose of this conversation, and I have a lot to share, so I'm going to move really quickly. The good thing is that you don't have to take notes if you don't want to, because if you want kind of a list of all the things that I share, I'll give you my email address, and then you can I'll send it over to you personally. So just you can stay kind of engaged in the conversation. So for the first definition, I want to make sure we're all level set on is what a customer profile is. Sometimes you'll hear it called avatar or persona. It really is a detailed description of your current or your potential customers. It includes both demographic and psychographic data. So not just of where they are, what they look like, what their family is like, but also how do they make decisions around what they buy when they buy it, why are they buying it in terms of what kind of pain are they trying to solve with each purchase. So it's those kinds of things that we really want to make sure that we understand. And the reason why is that when we deeply understand our customers, it really does help us target them and market that to them better. We can speak their language, so to speak. For the purpose of this conversation, a market identifies a group of customers, and we'll get a little bit deeper into market. And then industry is kind of a big sector of the economy, and it really is kind of separated by business model. So my industry is consulting, management consulting to be specific. Restaurants are also an industry, and larger industries are also divided into subsectors as well. So let's talk a little bit about the market breakdown. And I've really simplified this for the purpose of our conversation today. But at that highest level, you'll hear people talk about what is the total available or total addressable market. I call it the size of the prize. Some people refer to it as the total universe. It is often, but not always, you can also equate it to the industry, the size of the industry in terms of dollars. The target market, also sometimes called niche, is really the people that are going to be most likely to purchase your product or service. And it can be expressed as the number of individuals or households, and then the value of that in terms of dollars. And then finally is market share, which is the percentage that you expect your business to capture of that total addressable market. I'm going to go through a really quick example so that we kind of are still on the same page. So if Juana Whitmore, one individual, wanted to start a business as a home healthcare provider in Minnesota, I don't have the background for that, but let's just say that I do for the purpose of today's conversation. The total addressable market in Minnesota of home health care providers is $2 billion per year. And so I'm going to show you how I got some of these numbers. But what you'll see here is that based on my industry research, the data that I was able to gather from my industry searches, I know that in total, home healthcare providers are $2 billion a year. There are a little over 3,000 of those businesses in Minnesota. On average, individuals who are using home healthcare providers are spending almost $67,000 a year, which is about 30,000 adults age 65 or older using these services. So my target market, let's just say this is the number of people that I would want to market to. It's a really small number. Most likely I would market to more than 2,100 people, but just for the purpose of today's conversation, let's say that I was going to really niche down and just say these are only 2,100 adults that could potentially buy from me. That target market is worth about $140 million per year. That's 2,100 times $66,000. My market share is 0.03%. And how I got there is that I know on average, a business in Minnesota in this industry is doing about $650,000 a year. If I were to benchmark myself against the industry, I could expect to do about that. However, as a new business, or if I've got something that is really unique or I plan to market in a unique or different way, I may expect to capture more of that market, and you should expect to capture more of that market. But so this is telling me, though, if I were to just benchmark myself against the market in terms of market share, that would be me, Luana, helping 10 clients in their homes providing home health care at $650,000 a year. So you can kind of see from the top to the bottom what that looks like in terms of each of the kind of market groups that we'll talk about. What's really great is that a lot of this information is a great starting point before you get to actually doing your field research, surveying, interviewing experts, interviewing potential customers, just to get an idea of kind of a starting point of where your business could end up. So I'm going to stop for a second and see if we have any questions about anything that I just shared. So I really want to get to the good stuff. No questions? I'm always encouraged when there aren't any questions because maybe that means I'm doing something right, but who knows? I'm hoping there are a lot of questions at the end because I'm going to go through quite a few databases that are going to help you answer some business questions about your industry, about your customers, about your market, that will help you make other decisions down the line. So let's continue. So before we talk about the questions that we're going to help you run your business or start your business, there are two things that you have to do, not now, but eventually, before you can get to some of this data. And one of them is that you have to get a Hennepin County Library card. I know it sounds super antiquated. I know it does. And every time I talk about it, I expect people to get up and leave the room because, you know, clearly I'm too old to know what I'm doing. But the point is that so much of this information is available for free. And it is available through Hennepin County Library. And it's also available through university library databases as well. So if you don't have kind of alumni access to a library that has some of these databases, U of M is one of them that has them. You know, make a friend, find a friend, whatever, ask a friend, because you'll want to definitely get a hold of some of the information in these databases. Okay. So one question that is people always ask is, what's the size of my market? And we talked about several different sizes of markets here, from a dollar and an individual perspective. But there are a few ways for you to find that, or at least estimate it. One of the things that I really want to be clear about is that these databases are going to give you information that is directional in nature. So if you find something that says there are 20,000 people that are kind of within your niche, just know that's directional. It's approximate, it's estimated. And different databases may give you different information. And so just know that, if you're in the ballpark, you're doing pretty good. So the first database that we're going to look at, it is actually an industry report site. It's my favorite site, and it's called IBIS World. I actually have access to it through a university library, so it's free. But University of Minnesota, by the way, also has access to this database. If you don't have access, it's about $2,500 a year, or about $1,000 per report. So you can see why you would want to absolutely find a friend on this one. The second one is Mergent Intellect, and that's going to take us to a few different databases that we'll look at today. And really, you're going to be able to get industry reports there, business directories, demographics, consumer data. I mean, it's pretty extensive. This is free through the Hennepin County Library, so that's pretty amazing. And then Reference Solutions is also free through the Hennepin County Library, and that's going to give you not only a directory of businesses, but also consumer and donor data through their lifestyle database, as well as market research. The great thing about some of these databases is that they have downloadable, you can download some of your data. Through Reference Solutions, you can go and take that information that you found on Data Axle and actually order marketing lists, email lists, those kinds of things. So these are really pretty powerful databases. So the first one we'll look at is IBIS World. And so if I show you where to go, on the Hennepin County Library website, there is a browse here, and it's not necessarily the most intuitive site, but you could imagine it wouldn't be. But where it says online resources, that's where you're going to find kind of all of these databases around business and learning, all kinds of things. And this is where we're going to really live today when we're on the Hennepin County Library site. The online resources, however, are different than the digital collections. So I don't know why that is. But if we look for Mergent on this list, and then log in. This is where we'll find a lot of information around consumers, industries, those kinds of things. If I wanted to look at consumer data on this website, there are two places I would go. The first would be the demographics section. That is going to help you size your market, your total available market, based on census data, right? So locations, incomes, kind of all those basic things that are asked on the census. The reason why you would go here to search that information versus the census website is the census website is super difficult. So this is just an easier way to do it. You can look by state. You can then narrow it down by county. And then from there, you would search for demographics. So household information, titles of their job titles, their income, all those things are right here. What's really great is that you get to build your own report from all of this data. And then you can have the report or a link to the report emailed to you and then download it from there. The next place on here would be this consumer data tab. In the advanced search on this particular tab, what's super interesting is that it also has a lot of the same data as the demographics section does, but you can also search by lifestyle. So what kind of purchasing habits do they have? Do they purchase women's clothing? Do they purchase kids' clothing? Are they pet lovers? Are they into physical fitness? So for example, if I wanted to find people who were into running, I would add that to my criteria. It would tell me how many people, how many consumers are found with that particular criteria. And then I would search, and here I actually get the list of consumers, their addresses, and oh, you can't see what I'm showing? Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, that's too bad. Okay, let's go back. Let's do, thank you for texting me. Just let me know. Here we are. Let's go back to, okay, so now you're able to see the database, but I want to actually go back to the first page so that we're all on the same. So the first database that I showed that you didn't see was the demographics section. That was the one that you're able to search for census information in a much easier way than if you were to search the census database on the US government's website. So I just showed you your ability to search for county, zip code, city, neighborhoods, and then you can choose the demographics that you want to show. So for example, you could do population information, household information. So it'd be like number of people in a household, income information. So this is really the easiest way for you to look at, aggregate, and analyze information from the census instead of going to the census search. I have done the census search several times, and it's just a little bit more difficult than it needs to be. The second database that I was showing you was this consumer data section. This is where you get to see information around lifestyles and hobbies. So it's really getting to more of the what they're buying and their lifestyles versus age, gender, those kinds of things, right? So I was here showing you if I wanted to look at people who were into running based on their purchasing behavior, right? So like I said, this is directional information. I would do search, and then I can see not only numbers kind of by major metropolitan areas, I can also actually see the consumers that are in the database. I can download this information, I could market to them, all kinds of things. So this database is really super helpful in terms of not only being able to get a general size of the number of people that there may be in a particular area, but also if you want to then go on and market to those individuals as well. And this is all in that Mergent database. And we'll go back to this in a second as well. Any questions about that? All right, cool. All right, so then the next database we'll look at is the Reference Solutions database. It used to be called Reference USA. It used to be called that. I mean, I don't know. They just keep kind of changing the name of it. Not sure why. But yeah, Rahul, so if you want the kind of list, you can send me an email after that. And so I shared them before I started sharing the database on the screen. And then, yep, so you can send me an email. I'll send them to you. Yep. So I don't want you to, you can take notes if you want, but so the next database we're going to look at is called Reference Solutions. It used to be called Reference USA, and it might be called that in some other databases. So this one is going to give you very similar information to what we just saw in Mergent. And it's going to be kind of a matter of personal preference, really, in terms of which one you use. Personally, I like to look at both of them and compare what I'm seeing. But if you wanted to look at consumer lifestyles, this was one of those kind of the best way to look at this as well. If your business was targeting new homeowners or people who are moving, US businesses, in both of these cases, both on Mergent and on this Reference Solutions site, if you are a B2B business, you can also pull up very similar information and do very similar searches for businesses as you can for consumers. Meaning, if I was looking for businesses in a certain industry, if I was looking for women-owned or women-led businesses, if I was looking for businesses with that have been in business for a certain amount of time, with a certain credit rating, income, those kinds of things. So you really can kind of slice and dice the business data very similarly to the consumer data. We're going to go into the consumer lifestyle information. In the advanced search here, I'm like paranoid now. I keep going back and forth between the screens to make sure that you guys can see what I'm seeing. You can look at this information, and again, very similar to the Mergent database. You can kind of niche it down to a location, a neighborhood, a street address, as well as you can get kind of all of this census information here. And then you can also look at lifestyle information. So again, if I want to look at people who were into, photography, I can view those results. And again, here's the list. So I get an idea that there's, from a purchasing standpoint, based on purchase history, that these are the photography enthusiasts, and I can download that data as well. Your best bet, however, to download data is going to be in the Mergent database because there's no limit. Here, you can only download 10 screens at a time. It's not worth your time. Now, what's really great about this particular database is that it tells you how many of those emails or how many of those listings have email addresses tied to them. And you can get those emails through Data Axle, who owns the database. And you'll have to pay for that, but it's really nice to be able to do the searches on your own and then go to the Data Axle website and then order the mailing list or email list if you'd like. Any questions? All right, great. The next one is IBIS World. Now, this is the one where you'll really want to be able to have access to it through a university, or you can you can pay for it if you'd like. But like I said, the annual memberships, $2,500 around, and each report's around $950 to $1,000 depending on the report. So if you've got a friend who has access to the University of Minnesota Library, you definitely want to look at that and have them help you out. That said, what you're going to get from this database these are my favorite industry reports ever. And when I started to do and kind of mock up that Luana's home healthcare data, this is where I went. But there's also one other place you can go to. So this one is kind of some of the easiest to read, most kind of layman narrative terms in terms of how industry reports are written. But I'm going to give you some really interesting sections of this that are going to be super helpful for your business. The first is the industry at a glance. So this one is specific to Minnesota home health care providers. And you can see right away that this is a $1.9 billion industry in the state of Minnesota, and it's projected to grow 4.9% a year through 2024. That is super interesting, and it's really helpful when you yourself are starting to project sales and income for your businesses. You can also see what the profit is, profit margins, the number of businesses. Again, these numbers probably look a little familiar to you because they were on the PowerPoint to begin with. How many people are employed by that industry. So this kind of industry snapshot is extremely important as well. It starts to kind of bullet point some of the key trends that you should look for in your industry. So in that first market term, that total addressable market, I really started in this example that I gave earlier with this 1.9 billion as that total addressable market. Okay, checking the screen. Another super interesting part about this is that it also gives key statistics. So when you are trying to benchmark where your business should be, it gives the number of what the wages are per business. It gives employment units. It gives all kinds of things that can help you benchmark how your business should be performing against what's average, right? So these key ratios are super, super important. If you get access to this database, you're lucky. I love this database. It's something that I use probably several times a week without a doubt. Okay. If you don't have access to industry reports to kind of start to size the total addressable market and get some of those trends, you can also go back to this Mergent Intellect site, again, accessible through the Hennepin County Library, and then go to First Research. Great, you can still see. And this is going to give you very similar information to what IBIS World gives. It's just not in a nicely consumable version. So you can't download the report. You can kind of print it, but it just it's not really kind of nice to work with outside of the website. As well, what IBIS World has over this particular database is that the graphics, the charts, the graphs are they have more of them per report, as well as they're easier to understand pretty quickly. There's almost too much narrative in this, the Mergent report for me, so you kind of have to do a lot of digging. Now, what is actually really, really interesting is that what the Mergent report gives you that IBIS World doesn't is it gives you links to the news and what's happening on social media about this particular industry. It also gives you some call prep questions, which I think are super interesting. So, for example, if you were doing industry research and interviewing experts in the industry, it actually gives you a list of questions that would be really helpful for you to use in your survey or in your interview to really understand from their perspective what's going on with the industry. It also gives you some kind of answers based on the industry reports that you might expect to get from them. And then you could have them expand on that based on their personal experience. I find this to be really, really helpful. Okay. So that is where I would go to start to get the size of my market. Again, if I go back to the market breakdown, that's that total available and addressable market, as well as the niche, kind of where I might want to start to understand who really is most likely to buy my product based on their demographics and based on some of their buying behaviors. It really helps get down to that. What's interesting is that because of the time, I only have an hour to talk about this. The list here in terms of sizing markets and that kind of stuff, it's not at all exhaustive. So one of the other places that I really like to go that I am not going to show you, but you definitely can explore on your own, is Facebook. So if you are signed up as an advertiser on Facebook, you can put in your demographic and some of the psychographic information to really get an understanding of how many people are on Facebook that fits that. And as basically all of America's on Facebook. So it also gives you another number to start to compare the numbers that you're getting against. So you can really continue to put in more and more data into the Facebook search when you're setting up ads that kind of continues to really narrow down your market and get a really good number. What's also great about the Facebook search for setting up your ads around your market is that it tells you if you're going to advertise. Now, I'm getting too far into the advertising piece of this or marketing piece of it, but if you're going to set up a Facebook ad, it tells you what makes sense. There's like a little meter where if your market is too big, it will tell you. If it's too small, it will tell you. So it kind of gives you what is for the purposes of marketing on Facebook, what's a good number based on the demographic information that you put into the system. So I definitely use that one as well. So one of the questions that people ask is, how do I learn more about trends in my industry and in my market? So there are three main places that I go. Again, this list is not at all exhaustive in terms of what I use. But one of the more fun ones is Google Trends. We'll visit that one in a second. So it's one that you can put a search term in, and then it will tell you how that search term has changed over time in terms of volume. It also tells you where it's kind of popping, like where are the most searched locations, that kind of stuff. So it's kind of a fun thing to play around with. It really is helpful when you're looking for keywords that might be helpful, as well as Google's keyword search. But if you're just now starting to think about at the very beginnings of trying to understand what businesses or what products might be good, this is a really easy place to go to see, are people even thinking about some of the search terms that I might use? So it's just a really easy, user-friendly way versus Google keywords as a starting place. All the major kind of top 4 or 5 consulting firms has an insight section. My favorite is McKinsey and Co. So we'll take a look at that as well. It gives you trends and reports and commentary on what's happening in your industry. This is also free. And then Google Scholar. So for those of you who are really into the academics of an industry, emerging science, emerging studies, that is a great place to go. As well, some of those are free and others are going to be available through university library collections. Oh, Luana, can you make your screen bigger? It's hard to read. Oh, okay. Oh, yeah. Thanks, Katrina. Katrina answered your Q&A in the chat, anonymous. All right. So let's take a look at Google Trends, McKinsey as an example. But like I said, all of the top consulting firms has an insights section on their website. And then we'll look at Google Scholar as well. So here is Google Trends. Like I said, Google has a really great knack for making things really simple, easy to use, kind of clean, and easy to read. But if I wanted to search here for the Emmys, I would put that out there, and as you would expect, you can see how the search has changed. Interest in that term has changed over time. You can also see, based on which state is darkest here, which state's searching for it the most, as well as you can download the list here of regions and subregions. It also gives you a really nice list of related searches. So if you were wondering what else are people searching about around that term, you can see that there, as well as related topics. So I think this is, in terms of just kind of a quick, easy gut check, or if you're interested, what's going on with this? What's going on with that? I love Google Trends for that, just really simplified version of what people are looking for. Where this is applicable for your industry is that there are going to be certain products or keywords or things like that that you may want to search for within your industry that would be helpful. Okay. So McKinsey, like I said, has an industries section or an insight section, like all of them do, and this first sentence kind of really is my sentiment. There's no substitute for knowing an industry inside and out. What's really great about this is that they've kind of got these big sector groupings. So if I wanted to know what was going on in retail, I just click on retail and then go to our insights. And this is where they've really kind of put together their articles. A lot of those articles, particularly on the McKinsey site, have data and data sets and graphs and charts that go along with it that you could use to analyze information going forward. As well, it's just, they show you kind of what's related. So how are, in this example, how is Generation Z in terms of consumerism? It's really, again, I really kind of gravitate towards information that's presented in a clean and easy to use way, which is why I like McKinsey's site better than the others. Part of why. And then finally, Google Scholar. Check. So if I wanted to search for the restaurant industry, I could look at what's happening in the past, 4 years. I can sort it by date. I can also look at what's super interesting, if there are any patents that are associated to that particular search, which is again something that could be uh, informative if you were trying to start a business or grow a business, understanding what others are doing even before they've created it or announced it. But where you're going to get this list of a lot of it is scientific research, academic papers. So they're not all going to be kind of easy or free to access. But if you've got that friend at the University of Minnesota or a similar university or school in the area, they will be able to get you 99% of the things that you're going to find here on Google Scholar. Okay. The next question we will dig into is, how do I find customer profiles? So at the beginning, I gave you a definition of a customer profile or an avatar or a persona. And, wonderful enough, there are people who have kind of already started some of that work for you. So it's not going to be everything that you would need in terms of analyzing your potential customers or defining them, but these are going to be really great starting points for you. And there are really two places that I go. We're going to look at or two main places that I go, and then a couple of other tips and tricks here. We're going to look at how some of these major data companies have defined consumer profiles in the United States as your starting point for your avatars. But we'll also look at one of those companies has mapped those people on an interactive map that you can also use when you're looking to understand who is in a particular area. If I'm going to start a business that is dependent on location, for example. So that's going to be cool to look at too. So how do I find customer profiles? So ESRI is my kind of go-to for this. And it's, the vast majority of their information is free online, which is really great. But if you really wanted to get a full demographic report by location, that's only $50. That is a recent change in that cost. I think just a few years ago, it was, you had to kind of, subscribe to their, all of their stuff. And so, I've used this service a couple of times. And then we'll go back to Mergent Intellect, because they've also got a consumer profile database there as well. So. So ESRI, this is the company that's behind, I think it's Johns Hopkins that does the COVID map. They're getting their data, a lot of their data and support from ESRI. They are a kind of a massive data and mapping organization. But one of the things that I use from them all the time is what they call their tapestry segment summaries. So they've separated or segmented the United States into 14 life mode groups, and underneath each of those are several different groups of folks that they've identified. So my favorite group, for some reason, I don't know why, is laptops and lattes. So what's really great about these personas that they've identified is that they describe the demographics, so household size, income, and those kinds of things. but it also goes into kind of who they are, from a reason why they live where they live and they buy what they buy. It really goes into some of their kind of more socioeconomic traits. It breaks down those basic things like occupation and income, and race and ethnicity. It also gets into some of their market profile. So, where do they shop? Like, these guys like Netflix and reggae and blues and iPads and those kinds of things. So it really describes this group in terms of who they are, and it's a really great start for a profile that's really backed by data and starts to kind of give you as well a potential market size from at the highest level that you can then start to niche down to what really makes sense for your business. So there are, I don't know, I think there's like 30 I'm sorry, more than 30. There's 14 groups, and then underneath each of these there's 3 to 5 groups underneath, and it covers the entire United States. So it's pretty exhaustive. Again, this is something that I use all the time. Let's see. The next one, we'll go back to the intellect. Very similar to what ESRI has done. They also have a database or kind of a listing of lifestyle or segments there. And so let me actually go back to demographics. It's this Prism household distribution. And for some reason, you have to search for your demographics before you get access to this. I don't know why that is. It's super annoying. But like I said, similar to what ESRI has done, this Prism is, again, a list of segments in the United States. So midlife success, accumulated wealth, affluent empty nest, and then beneath those are subsets. And throughout this document, it describes each of those segments or personas or customer groups as they, in terms of their demographics, and then some kind of basic psychographics. Okay. And then the third place we'll look at, this one is one that people really like. This one is, again, another database by ESRI. Sorry, just a second. They call this their location strategy. And if I put in my zip code, I can select two different topics: population density, median age, blah, 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 all of the topics here. But what the most important thing is, because you can change these at any time, is that when you go to see results, there are a few things that you can see here. First things first is that you can see, based on that tapestry segmentation that I showed you just a couple of minutes ago, who lives in that area. So in the zip code of 55416, you've got Metro renters, Emerald City, and savvy suburbanites. I can click on each of these. I can read more, and then I can go to that PDF that I showed you that had those 3 or 4 pages that go through the entire description of that particular group of people. So for example, 21% of the people in this area are Emerald City. They are young and mobile, well-educated. They like to go online for professional networking. They buy natural, organic, all the things. So it's pretty exciting. Again, if you want to then see the entire description of that group, you can click on more details for that. If you are looking to to start a business that where the location is it's location dependent, you can also look at one of these two or both of these. And so what's really interesting about this is that there's a lot of data out there that says that people are willing to drive about 15 minutes, 15 minutes or 5 miles from where they are, where their home is, for kind of regular things. So if someone has to drive more than 15 minutes for a grocery store or to get their hair cut or whatever, it's oftentimes a hard sell. So Esri took that knowledge and did a drive time ring and a ring buffer, which is super cool. So if I click on drive time, so within a 15-minute drive of that zip code, I can then see what that looks like. Then I can hover over and see who is in each of these sections that's within a 15-mile drive from me. Similarly, within a 5-mile radius, I get to see and hover over and say, oh, this one is Fresh Ambitions, or this section is Parks and Rec. So it's super helpful to understand who is in an area, what their buying habits are, what their incomes are, their kind of demographic makeup. It's really super helpful for that. Okay. The next question, I'm going to leave the last couple of minutes for questions. But the next question that you might ask is, what if I had some bonus content for you? And I do. I have a couple of bonus sites for you. One of them is Hunter.io. This is a site that gives you business addresses for free. So if you are B2B, this is going to be super helpful for your email marketing efforts. And it's free for up to 50 searches a month. And then if you wanted to pay for it, it's super reasonable. I mean, it's just, I don't know how they're offering the service as cheaply as they are. And then Minnesota Compass. So we're going to take a couple of minutes to look at each of these as well. So Hunter.io is that site where you can find emails for businesses. I actually have a plugin on my browser. So I'm going to go to Jeremiah Program, which is the organization that I used to work for. And the plugin makes it really easy because, whoops. I can just go to a website, I click on the plugin, and there are the emails of the people that work there. I can add them to any list of leads that I have in my account. I can see all of the results if I wanted to. In this case, there's 80 results. But it's super easy for you to just say, I want to find the email address of these particular titles at an organization, and then go to the website and it'll pull it up. Now, obviously, it's not 100% accurate, but it's really, really helpful. And then the last site before I open it up for questions is Minnesota Compass. For those of you who are really kind of focused on Minnesota, this is going to be a really, really great website for you to just get in and dig around in exploring the data and insights and analysis. So really where I kind of live in terms of what's going on here in Minnesota. But you can also find data by community. And when I say community, it's not just city or zip code. You can actually go down to a neighborhood as well and see all of those things. Again, more census data, but also some things that Minnesota Compass has been really focused on, like disparities, disability information, nativity, health coverage, some things that you're not going to necessarily get from the census. They really do a really great job of looking at that, not only from the state level, but like I said, from city, zip code, county, and even neighborhood. If I clicked on a neighborhood here, I can get really deep information about that neighborhood as well. So what I use this for is if I'm looking at markets or consumers in Minneapolis or in Minnesota, I would go here to start to, again, continue to describe what could be happening within their immediate areas that could affect their buying habits and those kinds of things. All right. That's it. Again, this is not my exhaustive list, but these are kind of some of the things that I really use a lot. If you want this list, you can email me. I'm going to put that on the screen. So email me at luana@luanawhitmore.com. I will email you the list. I have it in I think a Word document. You can visit my website at luanawhitmore.com. You can connect with me, please, on LinkedIn, and then on Twitter at Luana Whitmore. Basically, if you put Luana Whitmore into Google, it's all me. So there's no one else named Luana Whitmore. What questions do we have, if any? Yeah, Grant says he's purchased data from Hoover's. Data by, NAICS code. Do you know if B2B data? Yep, it is. It absolutely is. You can search by both SIC and NAICS codes. Absolutely. You do not have to buy the data anymore, Grant. Yeah. Yep, the business data is absolutely available by industry, by both of those standards. Any other questions? We've got a couple minutes. Yes, Ashlyn, absolutely. If you are B2B, and as a fellow, we will go through that. But yes, if you are Ashlyn. So Ashlyn is one of the fellows, the Finn fellows, and I help deliver the curriculum. And so she's been asking me about things. And I'm like, that's coming up. That's coming up. So I keep giving her the same answer. But yes, if you are B2B, you would absolutely create a similar profile that reflects revenue, location, all those things. As well, you would also create a profile for kind of who's the most likely purchaser in that company, because you want to be able to relate to that individual as well. So it's kind of double duty. Anyone else? All right. Well, that is all that I have. I right to the minute. I'm glad I took some of the resources out that I that I had. If you have any questions again, or if you want the list of resources, just send me an email and I will absolutely send that over to you. Everyone except Ashlyn, because she's going to get a different list. All right. Thank you.